Sarah Chen looked out the window of her transport ship as it moved toward the massive space station. The Galactic Council's headquarters was bigger than anything she had ever seen. It looked like a giant metal flower floating in space with hundreds of docking ports and lights that blinked in patterns she did not understand. "First time seeing it?" asked Captain Williams, the pilot of her escort ship. His voice came through the communication system with some static. "Yes," Sarah replied. "It's incredible. Hard to believe we're actually here." Sarah was Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. For 50 years, humans had been trading with alien species, but always through private companies and small groups. Now finally, Earth was ready to ask for official membership in the galactic community. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. She learned about alien cultures, studied their languages, and practiced their customs. The governments of Earth had chosen her carefully. She was calm under pressure, spoke 7 alien languages, and understood how to deal with different types of beings. The docking process took 2 hours. Sarah's ship had to wait in line behind vessels from dozens of different worlds. She saw ships that looked like living creatures, others made of crystal, and some that seemed to be made of pure light. Each one was completely different from human technology. When her ship finally docked, Sarah took a deep breath. She wore a formal blue uniform that represented all of Earth's nations. In her bag, she carried gifts from every continent on Earth: art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. She also had holographic presentations showing human culture, history, and achievements. 2 alien guards met her at the airlock. They were tall, thin beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Sarah recognized them as Zephyrians from her studies. They did not speak to her, just nodded and started walking. Sarah followed them through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. The diversity was amazing. She saw creatures that looked like walking plants, others that floated in the air, and some that appeared to be made of living rock. The station's atmosphere was carefully controlled to support many different types of life. Sarah's suit helped her breathe, but she could smell strange scents through the filters. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached the main council chamber. Sarah stopped and stared. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed real-time images of space outside. Hundreds of seats were arranged in circles, each designed for different types of alien bodies. In the center was a raised platform where she would make her presentation. Most of the seats were filled. Sarah saw representatives from all the major galactic civilizations. The Vorthak delegation sat in a special section. They were crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns. The Kalari floated in tanks of liquid, while the Thorixian delegation perched on high branches designed for their bird-like bodies. A Zephyrian in elaborate robes approached Sarah. This was Chancellor Vextar, the current leader of the council. Sarah had studied his biography extensively. "Ambassador Chen of Earth," Vextar said in accented but clear English. "Welcome to the Galactic Council. We have been curious about your species for some time." "Thank you, Chancellor," Sarah replied, following the formal greeting she had practiced. "I bring greetings from all the people of Earth and hope for a peaceful relationship between our species and your great alliance." Vextar's expression did not change, but something in his eyes made Sarah uncomfortable. "Yes, peace. That is what we must discuss today." The Chancellor led Sarah to the center platform. As she walked, she noticed something strange. The aliens in the chamber were not talking among themselves as she expected. Instead, they were all watching her with what seemed like suspicion or even fear. This was not the curious welcome she had hoped for. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Vextar announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "Today we consider the request of the species known as humans for membership in our alliance. Ambassador Chen will present their case." Sarah activated her holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the air around her. Beautiful landscapes, great cities, and diverse cultures. She began her carefully prepared speech. "Honorable members of the Council, humans have dreamed of this day for generations. We come to you not as conquerors or competitors, but as a young species eager to learn from the wisdom of older civilizations." She showed images of human art, music, and literature. She explained human values of cooperation, creativity, and the desire to explore and understand the universe. She presented Earth's scientific achievements and offered to share human knowledge with all council members. But as Sarah spoke, she noticed the atmosphere in the room growing colder. Delegates whispered among themselves, and many seemed uncomfortable with her presentation. The Vorthak crystals were pulsing in rapid, angry patterns that Sarah recognized as signs of hostility. When she finished her presentation, Chancellor Vextar stood up. "Thank you, Ambassador Chen. The Council will now discuss your request." What followed was not a discussion but a series of accusations. Delegate after delegate stood up to list complaints about humans. They called humans aggressive, expansionists, and dangerous primitives. They claimed that human traders had been spying on Council worlds and that human colonies were growing too fast. "The human species shows all the signs of a galactic threat," declared Representative Zothic of the Kellery delegation. "They spread too quickly, they adapt too easily, and they show no respect for established boundaries." Sarah tried to respond to each accusation, but she realized that the Council had already made up their minds. This was not a hearing to consider human membership. It was a trial, and humans had already been found guilty. The final speaker was an ancient Thorixian named Kriha. Her voice was like broken glass as she spoke. "The pattern is always the same. A young species emerges, spreads across their region of space, and then seeks to dominate older civilizations. We have seen it before. We will not see it again." Chancellor Vextar called for a vote. Sarah watched in growing horror as every single delegation voted against human membership. But worse was coming. "The Galactic Council finds that the human species represents a clear and present danger to galactic peace and stability," Vextar announced. "Ambassador Chen, you are hereby charged with representing a species of galactic concern. The penalty for this crime is death." Sarah felt the world spinning around her. This could not be happening. She had come here in peace, offering friendship and cooperation, and now they were going to kill her for it. Council security forces surrounded her, massive robotic units that moved with deadly precision. Sarah activated her emergency transmitter, hoping to get a message back to Earth. "This is Ambassador Chen," she said quickly into her communicator as the security forces closed in. "The Council has rejected our membership and declared us a threat. They're going to execute me. Tell Earth." The signal was cut off as one of the robots destroyed her communicator. Sarah looked up at Chancellor Vextar one last time. "You're making a terrible mistake," she said. "Humans wanted peace. We came here with open hands. Peace," Vextar replied coldly, "is exactly what we intend to preserve. Remove her." As the security forces led her away, Sarah caught sight of something that chilled her blood. In the observer section, she saw a human face, a trader she recognized from the commercial district. He was watching everything with cold, calculating eyes, and when their eyes met, he nodded slightly. Sarah suddenly realized that her mission might not have been as secret as Earth's leaders had claimed. Someone had been watching, waiting, and planning for exactly this outcome. The execution chamber was designed for public viewing. Thousands of aliens watched from galleries around the circular room, while billions more watched through broadcasts across the galaxy. Chancellor Vexistar wanted every species to see what happened to those who threatened the galactic order. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the chamber, her hands bound behind her back. She wore the same blue uniform she had worn for her diplomatic presentation just hours earlier. The irony was not lost on her. She had come to represent humanity's hope for peace, and now she would die as an example of humanity's supposed threat. "Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth," Chancellor Vextar announced to the watching crowds, "you have been found guilty of representing a species that endangers galactic stability. Do you have any final words?" Sarah looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Fear, curiosity, satisfaction. She saw all these emotions reflected in their strange features, but she also saw something else in a few faces: doubt. Not everyone in the galaxy agreed with this decision. "I have words," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "But not for you, Chancellor. My words are for the galaxy that will have to live with what you do here today." She turned to face the main broadcast camera. "To all the species watching this, remember that Earth sent me here in peace. We offered friendship, knowledge, and cooperation. We asked only to be welcomed as equals in the galactic community. This is how the Council answered that request." Chancellor Vextar made a gesture, and Sarah felt energy weapons targeting her from multiple directions. "Any last words for your own species, human?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Tell them we tried to do this the civilized way." The energy beams fired simultaneously. Sarah Chen, Earth's first and last ambassador to the Galactic Council died instantly. Her body dissolved into particles that scattered across the chamber floor. The broadcast ended with Chancellor Vexitar addressing the galaxy. Let this be a warning to all emerging species. The Galactic Council will protect the peace and stability that has existed for thousands of years. No threat to that peace will be tolerated. On Earth, the broadcast reached the Global Defense Council's headquarters in Geneva within 4 hours. The quantum communication relay, hidden inside what appeared to be a normal trade station, carried the signal directly to Earth's leadership. President Martinez watched the execution footage 3 times before speaking. Around the conference table sat the leaders of every major nation on Earth, along with the heads of Earth's military and intelligence services. The room was completely silent. "How long do we have before they come for us?" asked Prime Minister O'Brien of the European Federation. Admiral Torres, head of the Solar Defense Fleet, checked his tablet. "Unknown. Our intelligence suggests they'll want to make an example of us, so probably within the next few months. They'll want other species to see what happens to threats like us. Recommendations?" President Martinez asked. General Hassan of the African Union spoke first. "We could try to negotiate. Send another diplomatic mission, this time with offers of complete submission to Council authority." "They just executed our diplomat on live broadcast," replied Admiral Torres. "They've made their position clear. There will be no negotiation." Director Kim of Earth's Intelligence Service activated a holographic display. "We've been monitoring Council communication since the execution. They're already planning military action against Earth and all human colonies. They call it a cleansing operation to remove the human threat from the galaxy." President Martinez stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Geneva looked peaceful in the morning sunlight. Children played in parks, people went to work, families lived their normal lives. None of them knew that their entire species had just been condemned to death by a galactic government they had never heard of. "Mr. President," Admiral Torres said quietly, "we need to discuss Protocol Omega." Every person in the room went silent. Protocol Omega was Earth's most classified military contingency plan. Only a handful of people in the world knew it existed, and fewer still knew what it contained. "Are you certain there's no other option?" President Martinez asked. Director Kim activated another display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Sir, they're mobilizing fleets from 17 different species. Current estimates suggest an invasion force of over 50,000 ships will reach Earth within 6 months. They're not planning to occupy us. They're planning to exterminate us." President Martinez returned to his seat. "Very well. I'm authorizing Protocol Omega. Admiral Torres, how long do you need?" "Prometheus has been running background calculations for years, sir. We can begin active implementation immediately. Full deployment will take approximately 90 days. "Prometheus?" asked the Chinese premier. "I thought that was just a theoretical research project." Admiral Torres and Director Kim exchanged glances. "Sir," Director Kim said carefully, "Prometheus has been much more than theoretical for quite some time." President Martinez activated his personal authorization codes. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, in a facility that officially did not exist, computers that humanity was supposedly decades away from building received their activation signals. The AI system known as Prometheus opened files that had been sealed for 30 years. Across the solar system, hidden installations that appeared to be mining operations or research stations received new orders. On Mars, in the asteroid belt, and in the outer planets, construction projects that had been moving slowly for decades suddenly accelerated. "What about our people in council space?" asked the Japanese representative. "We have thousands of human traders, researchers, and workers throughout the galaxy. Recall Protocol 7 is already in effect," Director Kim replied. "All human civilians in council territory have been given emergency evacuation orders. They think it's just a security precaution after the ambassador's death. Most should be back in human space within 2 weeks. And the ones who can't make it back?" Director Kim's expression was grim. "They've been given different orders." President Martinez signed the final authorization. "God help us all!" "Admiral, you have full authority to implement Protocol Omega." Director Kim, I want all intelligence assets focused on Council military movements. Everyone else, prepare your nations for what's coming. As the world leaders left the meeting, Admiral Torres remained behind with President Martinez. Sir, are you certain about this? Once we begin, there's no going back. President Martinez looked at the photo on his desk, his granddaughter playing in the same Geneva park he had looked at earlier. They killed our diplomat. They're planning to exterminate our entire species. What choice do we have? None, sir. But the galaxy won't be the same when this is over. No, President Martinez agreed. It won't be. In the depths of the Colorado facility, Prometheus began its work. Across human space, ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels for decades activated military-grade systems. Hidden weapons platforms came online, manufacturing facilities that had been producing consumer goods retooled for war production. But most importantly, the vast network of monitoring stations that human traders had been quietly installing throughout Council space for the past 50 years began transmitting data. Every major military base, every government facility, every critical piece of infrastructure in Council territory, Prometheus now knew where they all were. The Galactic Council had made their choice. They saw humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated. They were about to discover just how right they had been. 3 days after Ambassador Chen's execution, every human trade ship in Council space simply disappeared. Captain Zex Hera of the Vorthak Defense Force was the first to report the anomaly. His patrol had been monitoring a busy trade route near the Kepler Nebula when 12 human cargo vessels that had been scheduled to dock at various stations along the route never arrived at their destinations. Perhaps they received word of their ambassador's fate and decided to flee, suggested his second-in-command, a young officer whose crystal body pulsed with uncertain light patterns. 12 ships, all on different routes, all disappearing at exactly the same time. Zexhara's own crystals flickered with skepticism. That level of coordination suggests prior planning. Similar reports flooded in from across Council space. Human traders, researchers, diplomatic staff, and workers were vanishing from every corner of the galaxy. Spaceports that had hosted human merchants for decades found their docking bays empty. Research stations where human scientists had worked alongside alien colleagues discovered their human staff had simply walked away from their projects. But the humans had not just disappeared, they had been replaced. Station Commander Veltar of the Rigel 7 facility noticed it first. The human section of the station had been evacuated, but automated systems were still running. When his maintenance crew investigated, they found something that made his blood run cold. Hidden throughout the human quarters were scanning devices more advanced than anything in the Council's technology database. The devices had been recording everything: troop movements, security protocols, communication frequencies, and classified military data. How long have these been here? Veltar asked his chief engineer. The engineer, a multi-armed Kalari named Brixton, examined the devices with his specialized tools. Based on the power cells and data storage, at least 15 years. Maybe 20 years. That's impossible. Humans have only had access to our technology for 50 years, and these devices are more advanced than our current equipment. Brixton's response made Veltar's skin crawl. Sir, I don't think these are based on our technology at all. Similar discoveries were being made throughout Council space. What the galaxy had assumed were primitive human traders had actually been running the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. Every trade route, every military base, every government facility, humans had been watching, recording, and learning for decades. Chancellor Vextar called an emergency session of the Council. The Great Chamber was filled with panic and confusion as reports came in from across their territory. How could we have missed this? Demanded Representative Kriha of the Thorixians. Our security services are supposed to be the best in the galaxy. Because we underestimated them, replied General Thexmar of the Kalari military. We saw primitive apes playing with technology they barely understood. We never considered that they might be far more advanced than they appeared. Director Yothix of Council Intelligence activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots appeared throughout Council territory, thousands of them marking every location where human monitoring devices had been discovered. This is what we've found so far, Yothix announced. But our analysis suggests these are only the devices we were meant to find. The real intelligence gathering network is probably much larger and better hidden. The display changed to show communication intercepts from the past 3 days. We've been monitoring human communication since the evacuation began. The traffic patterns suggest a level of coordination that should be impossible for a species we classified as emerging. Chancellor Vextar studied the display with growing unease. What are your recommendations? We accelerate the invasion timeline, General Thexmar replied immediately. Strike Earth before they can complete whatever they're planning. Sir, Director Yothix interrupted. I'm not sure that's wise. If they've been planning for this scenario for decades, rushing into their territory might be exactly what they want us to do. Before the Chancellor could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered and changed. The Council's own communication system had been hijacked. A human face appeared on the displays, a middle-aged man in a military uniform that none of the Council members recognized. Members of the Galactic Council, the human began, his voice calm and controlled. I am Admiral Torres of the Terran Defense Command. I am speaking to you from the Sol system, which you know as Earth's home. The chamber erupted in shocked voices, but the Admiral continued speaking. 3 days ago, you executed our ambassador. You declared our entire species a threat to galactic stability. You have begun mobilizing military forces to attack our homeworld and colonies. The Admiral's expression remained perfectly neutral. You have made your choice. Now we will make ours. Chancellor Vextar activated his personal communicator. Cut this transmission immediately. We're trying, sir, came the panicked response from the control room. They've taken complete control of our communication network. We can't shut them down. Admiral Torres continued as if he had heard the exchange. For 50 years, humanity has been present in your space. You assumed we were primitive traders and researchers, eager to learn from your superior civilizations. You were partially correct, we were learning, but we were not primitive. The display changed to show technical specifications that made several council members gasp. Ships, weapons, and technology that dwarfed anything in the galactic database appeared on their screens. Every human who entered your space was part of an intelligence-gathering operation. Every trade deal, every research partnership, every diplomatic contact was designed to map your capabilities, identify your weaknesses, and prepare for this moment. Representative Zothik of the Kalari stood up. This is impossible. Our intelligence services would have detected such an operation. Admiral Torres smiled for the first time. Your intelligence services? Representative Zothik, we've been reading your classified communications for 23 years. We know about your fleet movements, your defensive positions, and your military capabilities better than you do. The display showed real-time intelligence reports from across Council space, troop positions, fleet deployments, and strategic plans that should have been completely secret. You declared war on humanity based on your fear that we might someday become a threat to your galactic order. Admiral Torres continued. But you made one critical error in your analysis. Chancellor Vextar found his voice. What error? You assumed we wanted to join your galactic order. You assumed we needed your approval to exist in this galaxy. The Admiral's expression turned cold. We don't. The transmission showed images of massive fleets moving through space, ships unlike anything the Council had ever seen, with designs that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Our ambassador came to your station with an offer of peace and cooperation. She died for that offer, but her mission served its purpose. It confirmed what we already suspected. You see any species that doesn't submit to your authority as a threat to be eliminated. The display changed one final time, showing a strategic map of the galaxy with human positions marked throughout Council space. So we will eliminate the threat, Admiral Torres concluded. But the threat isn't humanity. The threat is a system that fears change, growth, and new ideas. The threat is a galactic government that murders diplomats and plans genocide against entire species. You can't win against the combined might of 47 civilizations, Chancellor Vextar shouted. Chancellor, we're not fighting 47 civilizations. We're fighting a government that those civilizations have allowed to make decisions for them. Most of your member species have never even voted on whether they wanted to go to war with humanity. The transmission ended with a final message. The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity. Humanity accepts. But understand this. When the fighting stops, the galaxy will never be the same. You could have had us as friends. Instead, you'll have us as conquerors. The screens went black, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. General Thexmar was the first to speak. How many ships do they have? Director Yothix checked his reports with shaking hands. Based on what we just saw, more than us. The first attack came exactly 1 week after Admiral Torres' transmission. The target was the Kalari military shipyard at Proxima Station, one of the most heavily defended installations in Council space. Commander Velthanor had been preparing his defenses for days. Proxima Station boasted over 300 defensive platforms, a fleet of 2,000 patrol ships, and energy shields that could supposedly withstand anything in the galactic arsenal. The Kalari were proud of their military technology. They had been the Council's primary weapons manufacturers for over 500 years. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported his tactical officer. "Single vessel approaching from the Centauri corridor." Velthanor almost laughed. "One ship? Against Proxima Station? Open a communication channel. Let's see what these humans think they can accomplish." The response was not what he expected. Instead of a surrender or a demand for negotiation, the human ship simply transmitted a single word: "Evacuate." "Sir, should we respond?" asked his communications officer. "No. Power up all defensive systems. If they want to commit suicide, that's their choice." The human ship was unlike anything in the galactic database. It was roughly the size of a Council cruiser, but its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons, no obvious engine systems, and no energy signature that matched any known technology. "The vessel has stopped moving, sir. Distance 50,000 kilometers." Velthanor studied the tactical display. The ship was well outside the range of any weapon in the galaxy. "What are they waiting for?" He got his answer when space itself seemed to bend around the human vessel. Reality twisted in ways that made seasoned military officers dizzy, just watching the sensors. When the distortion cleared, the human ship was gone. "Where did it go?" Velthanor demanded. "Sir, it's right there." Velthanor looked at his tactical officer in confusion, then followed her pointing finger to the main display. The human ship was now floating less than 1 kilometer from the station's command center, well inside their defensive perimeter. "That's impossible. Our shields would have prevented." The station's lights flickered once, then went out completely. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but every system on Proxima Station was dead. Weapons, shields, life support, communications, everything had simply stopped working. "What did they do to us?" Velthanor whispered. His answer came through the station's intercom system, which somehow still worked despite everything else being offline. A calm human voice spoke in perfect Kalari. "Commander Velthanor, this is Captain Harrison of the Terran vessel Nightfall. Your station's systems have been disabled by quantum field disruption. No permanent damage has been done." "Impossible," Velthanor replied, though he was no longer sure what was impossible when it came to human technology. "Your defensive platforms are also disabled. Your patrol fleet has suffered complete system failure. Please evacuate all personnel to the emergency shelters. This facility will be destroyed in 30 minutes. Velthanor activated his personal communicator, hoping to reach Council Command. Instead, he got Captain Harrison's voice again. "Your communications are being monitored and filtered, Commander. You may issue evacuation orders, but any requests for military assistance will not be transmitted." The next 30 minutes were the longest of Velthanor's career. He watched helplessly as his mighty fortress, the pride of Kalari military engineering, became completely defenseless. Evacuation shuttles launched smoothly. Apparently, the humans had no interest in killing civilians. But every military system remained dead. When the 30 minutes were up, the human ship moved away from the station. Velthanor watched from an evacuation shuttle as space around Proxima Station began to shimmer. The massive installation, which had taken 50 years to build, simply collapsed in on itself as if reality had decided it no longer existed. "By the ancient gods," whispered his tactical officer. "They made it implode without using any weapons." Similar attacks happened across Council space over the next 2 weeks. Each time, a single human ship would appear at a military installation, disable all systems through unknown technology, evacuate personnel, and then destroy the target. The humans showed no interest in killing civilians, but they systematically dismantled the Council's military infrastructure with casual ease. Chancellor Vextar called emergency meetings daily, but each session brought only worse news. The Therixian Deep Space Monitoring Network had been completely compromised. The Zephyrian communication relay system was under human control. The Vorthak crystal foundries that produced advanced technology were shutting down one by one. How are they doing this? Demanded General Thexmar during one particularly heated session. Our intelligence suggests they have maybe a few hundred ships at most. We have fleets numbering in the thousands. Director Yothix had aged visibly over the past 2 weeks. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. General, I don't think ship numbers matter anymore. Their technology is so far beyond ours that comparing fleet sizes is like comparing arrows to nuclear weapons. That's impossible. 50 years ago, they didn't even have interstellar travel. 50 years ago, they let us think they didn't have interstellar travel, corrected Representative Kreha. We've been operating under false assumptions from the beginning. Chancellor Vextar studied the tactical displays showing the steady collapse of Council military power. Red zones marked areas where human forces had taken control. Yellow zones showed regions where Council authority was being challenged. Green zones, representing secure Council territory, were shrinking daily. Director Yothix, what do our intelligence analysts say about human capabilities? Yothix activated a holographic report. Sir, based on observed technology, we believe humans are operating with scientific principles we don't understand. They can manipulate space-time, disable electronics through quantum field manipulation, and move ships in ways that violate known physics. Could they have been in contact with another civilization? Perhaps they're working with some unknown advanced species. No, sir. The technology signatures are completely unique. This is definitely human innovation, not borrowed technology. Representative Zothik of the Kalari delegation stood up. Then how did a primitive species develop technology that makes our most advanced science look like stone tools? The answer came from an unexpected source. A small holographic projector in the center of the chamber activated without being touched. Admiral Torres appeared again, but this time his image was life-sized and seemed to be standing in the room with them. Because we're not primitive, he said simply. We never were. Security forces immediately surrounded the hologram, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the projection. You're wondering how we developed this technology so quickly, Admiral Torres continued. The answer is simple. We didn't develop it quickly. We've been working on it for over 200 years. Chancellor Vextar found his voice. 200 years? Your species has only had space travel for 100 years. That's what we wanted you to believe. Chancellor, humans reached the outer planets of our solar system 300 years ago. We've had interstellar travel for over 2 centuries. We've been studying galactic civilization since before the current council was formed. The admission hit the chamber like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about humanity had been a lie. We discovered the galactic community when we were still a young species, Admiral Torres explained. But we also discovered something else. The pattern of how older civilizations treat younger ones. Conquest, absorption, or elimination, always. That's not true, protested Representative Kreha. The Council has peacefully integrated hundreds of species. After those species submitted completely to Council authority, any species that refused to submit was either conquered or destroyed. We found the records, Representative. Your own archives document dozens of pacification campaigns against species that were declared threats to galactic stability. The silence in the chamber was deafening, so we made a choice, Admiral Torres continued. We would pretend to be a young primitive species just discovering the galaxy. We would learn everything we could about you while appearing harmless and eager to please, and we would prepare for the day when the Council decided we were a threat. You planned this war from the beginning, Chancellor Vextar accused. We planned for survival. The war was your choice, Chancellor. Our ambassador came to you with genuine hopes for peace. If you had accepted us as equals, none of this would have happened. Admiral Torres' image began to fade. But you chose to see us as a threat. So we became one. The final battle, if it could be called a battle, took place at the Galactic Council headquarters itself. 3 months after the war began, human forces had systematically destroyed or captured every major military installation in Council space. Trade had collapsed, communications were under human control, and member species were beginning to question whether their government could protect them. Chancellor Vextar stood in the same chamber where Ambassador Chen had been executed. But now he was the one facing judgment. The great domed ceiling that once showed the majesty of space now displayed the positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of ships surrounded the station, their alien technology making the Council's own defenses look like primitive toys. Admiral Torres entered the chamber through the main doors, Not as a hologram this time, but in person. He wore the same uniform from his previous transmissions, but now Council security forces stood aside as he walked past them. The human admiral was accompanied by a dozen officers from various human colonies and Earth itself. Chancellor Vextar, Admiral Torres said formally, "By the authority of the Terran hegemony, I accept your surrender." "I have not offered surrender," Vextar replied, though his voice lacked conviction. Admiral Torres gestured to the displays showing human ships throughout the galaxy. "Your military forces have been neutralized. Your communication networks are under our control. Your member species are requesting separate peace negotiations with human representatives. What exactly do you think you're still fighting with?" The truth was harsh but undeniable. The war had lasted exactly 93 days. In that time, humanity had demonstrated technology so advanced that resistance seemed pointless. They had never targeted civilian populations, never destroyed inhabited worlds, and never used their weapons against anyone who wasn't actively fighting them. But they had completely dismantled the military and political structure that held the Galactic Alliance together. "How?" Vextar asked quietly. "How did we misunderstand your capabilities so completely?" Admiral Torres walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where Ambassador Chen had died. "Because you saw what you expected to see. A primitive species, grateful for contact with superior civilizations, eager to learn and willing to accept a junior role in galactic society." He activated a holographic display showing Earth's hidden history. Images of advanced ships, secret colonies, and technology development projects that had been running for centuries appeared in the air around them. 200 years ago, when humans first detected galactic civilization, we sent scouts to observe and learn. What we found was a pattern that repeated throughout history. Older species dominated younger ones through superior technology and established power structures. The display changed to show historical records from the Council's own archives. The Kalari conquered 12 species before joining the Council. The Therixians absorbed 15 smaller civilizations. The Zephyrians eliminated 3 species they declared incompatible with galactic order. Every major Council member got their position by conquest or by submitting to conquest. That was different, Vextar protested. Those were ancient conflicts. The modern Council promotes peace and cooperation by forcing newer species to accept subordinate status, Admiral Torres replied. "Chancellor, we read your classified files. We know about the guidance protocols used on member species. We know about the technology restrictions, the territorial limitations, and the military oversight. Council membership isn't an alliance, it's absorption." The display showed more recent Council policies toward newer species. Trade restrictions, technology limitations, and political oversight that effectively made new members into client states rather than equal partners. "So we chose a different path," Admiral Torres continued. "We would develop our technology in secret while appearing to be exactly what you expected. A young, naive species discovering the galaxy. We sent traders who were actually intelligence officers. We established research partnerships that were really technology assessment programs. We participated in cultural exchanges that were systematic studies of Council civilization." Chancellor Vextar looked around the chamber at the faces of other Council members. Most looked defeated, but some showed something else. Relief, as if a terrible weight had been lifted from their shoulders. "The war is over," Admiral Torres announced. "The Galactic Council as a political entity is dissolved. Member species are free to form their own governments, join the Terran hegemony as equal partners, or remain independent as long as they don't threaten other worlds. You can't just dissolve a government that has existed for thousands of years." Representative Kriha protested. "We already have," Admiral Torres replied calmly. "Your military forces are gone. Your communication networks belong to us. Your member species are establishing direct relations with human representatives. What government functions are you still performing?" The question hung in the air unanswered. Admiral Torres turned to address the broader chamber where representatives from dozens of species watched the proceedings. "The Terran hegemony extends an offer of alliance to all species in this galaxy. Equal partners, equal voices, equal rights. No species will be required to submit to human authority, but no species will be permitted to dominate others." He paused, looking directly at the former Council leadership. "The age of galactic empires is over. The age of equals has begun." Over the following weeks, the transition was surprisingly smooth. Many Council species, particularly the smaller ones, welcomed human leadership after centuries of subordination to the major powers. The Kalari military, impressed by human technology, requested joint training programs. The Therixians, who had always been scholars first and politicians second, eagerly sought access to human scientific databases. Some species chose independence, and humans respected that choice. A few, led by die-hard council loyalists, attempted to form resistance movements, but found little support among populations tired of being governed by distant authorities who made decisions without consulting them. 3 months after the council's surrender, Admiral Torres stood once again in the former council chamber. But now it was filled with representatives from over 100 species, and the seating was arranged in a circle rather than hierarchical rings. The holographic displays showed not the dominance of human fleets, but cooperative projects between human and alien scientists, joint exploration missions, and trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Ambassador Chen believed that humans and aliens could work together as equals, Admiral Torres said to the assembled delegates. She died for that belief, but her dream is becoming reality. Chancellor Vextar, now just another delegate rather than a supreme leader, stood up. Admiral, may I ask a question that has troubled me since the surrender? Of course. You clearly had the capability to conquer the galaxy decades ago. Why didn't you? Why go through the elaborate deception of pretending to be primitive traders? Admiral Torres considered the question carefully. Because conquest wasn't our goal, Chancellor. If we had simply invaded and taken control, we would have become what we despised, another galactic empire ruling through force. We wanted something different. What did you want? A galaxy where species work together by choice, not compulsion. Where younger civilizations aren't forced to submit to older ones. Where diversity of thought, culture, and technology is celebrated rather than suppressed. Admiral Torres gestured to the chamber around them, filled with beings from across the galaxy working together on equal terms. This is what we wanted, and this is what Ambassador Chen died to make possible. The new galactic alliance that emerged from the ashes of the Council was unlike anything in galactic history. Technology flowed freely between species. Joint exploration missions pushed the boundaries of known space. Trade flourished without the restrictions and favoritism that had characterized Council policies. But perhaps most importantly, no single species dominated the others. The Terran hegemony had the most advanced military, but they used it to protect smaller species rather than control them. Decision-making was collaborative, with each member species having a voice proportional to their contribution to the common good. Years later, when historians tried to analyze how humanity had achieved such a complete victory so quickly, they focused on the advanced technology, the superior intelligence gathering, and the careful long-term planning. But those who had lived through the transition knew the real secret. Humanity had won not just because they were stronger, but because they offered something the galaxy had never had before, the chance to be equals rather than subjects. After millennia of galactic empires built on dominance and submission, the promise of true partnership was irresistible. Ambassador Sarah Chen's dream of peaceful cooperation had come true, though not in the way she had imagined. Sometimes, the historians noted, the greatest victories are won not by those who seek to conquer, but by those who seek to liberate.